Hey, this is Bob the OT, and today on Army and Education, we'll be talking about why people may radicalise. Since posting the first video, I've been getting a lot of stick about
The triangle, my triangle.
but it is a handy image, so let's go back to it. In it, you can see that, as stated in the SDSR, it is the government's role to protect the people. But what do we mean when we say people? People are complex, really complex. Depending on who I'm speaking to, I'm either Irish, Scottish, or Scouse, a teacher, a paleontologist, or officer, part of the armed forces, or just part of the army, a husband, a brother, or son. Yes, my genes have played a role in how I think and behave, but arguably much more important is how I've been brought up, and it says a lot about my privileged upbringing in a liberal and fairly secular culture that I do not define myself by religion, albeit acknowledging that I hold many Christian values. I am happy with who I am, and although I may want my life and the country to be different, I do not feel like my identity is under threat. If you feel the same way, chances are you will put up with quite a lot. But let's take a look at my triangle again. Remember, it's the economy, stupid. Cultures fall on a spectrum from being very individualistic to putting huge emphasis on community. But within the range of your culture, wherever it sits on this spectrum, it is a general rule of thumb that the better off you are, the more individualistic you become. More importantly for the content of this video, the more you struggle, the more you identify with your community. How this community defines itself will depend upon which elements of its culture is most threatened, and how it values sanctity, fairness, loyalty, authority, and liberty. But one of the difficulties governments have in protecting their people is that the people may consider themselves part of communities outside the boundaries of the state. Side note, my predecessor, Lee the OT, has done an excellent video discussing what the state is. The link for this is in the description to this video below. But back to the topic at hand. Yes, in its cities, Britain is multicultural. But like attracts like, and what you find is that each culture separates itself into different communities within the cities and suburbs. In times of socioeconomic difficulty, the natural tendency is to have an us against them attitude, and this becomes stronger and stronger. Here is where social media exacerbates the problems, as at no other time in history has there been such widespread echo chambers, able to distort facts so easily, paint problems so black and white, and escalate the angry tone of discussions so rapidly. In times of plenty, people are fairly happy with their lot, so the political parties end up fighting for the centre ground and become more and more similar. A situation made worse by the professionalisation of politicians, leading to a form of groupthink dislocated from reality in many ways. In times of hardship, people polarise though, and this makes the establishment an easy target. It should come as no surprise that there has been a dramatic rise in populist parties around the world since the 2008 crash, as people campaign to have their voices heard. The nature of the parties will differ from country to country, as will the nature of the outsider that is targeted, as this will be down to how the local narratives have evolved. But the point is that in the world of the echo chamber, this more radicalized speech gives legitimacy to the views of more extreme members of society, whilst not going quite far enough for them. And, much like war being an extension of a country's policy by other means, so violent action becomes an extension of the desires of the unheard as they progress from discontent to radicalism to extremism. It is often said that the ranks of terrorists are filled with those from low educational backgrounds, who are easily impressionable. But actually, the facts show that you are more likely to become radicalized if you are middle class. Potentially because you've been brought up to be aspirational and are less likely to accept the situation you find yourself in. In my mind, these are the Phase 1 radicals. These people naturally hold positions of authority within their communities, and can then inspire the Phase 2 radicals. Phase 2 radicals tend to have few prospects, and look for a sense of purpose. More often than not, they will be men, but women can become phase 2 radicals as well. Religion is often cited as a motivating factor, but what Andrew Silk has found is that this is actually an excuse for more human underlying drivers, such as the need for food and the need for respect and self-worth. Humans are inherently selfish, and the majority just want to get by. With this in mind, it should come as no surprise that in Afghanistan, some villagers would literally send one son to join the army and another the Taliban, as the goal was for their family to survive, not for any wider political purpose. But once in the organization, the higher goals do become real. In its counterterrorism strategy, Contest, and its associated Prevent procedures, the government is attempting to stop radicalization in its tracks by dealing with vulnerable individuals, challenging ideologies, and helping to support institutions where those individuals may belong. But this is much easier said than done, whether because the organization actually has greater legitimacy than the authority within the community, think the IRA during the Troubles, for example, or because the terrorist organizations have become decentralized, encouraging others but with minimal command and control, or because the proliferation of what I call phase 3 radicals, which are those who are clearly mentally disturbed, are isolated or on the margins of their community, and are inspired by the press coverage of simple attacks. These are the so-called lone wolves, which, due to the prevalence of guns in America, have become so commonplace. They are a very different breed to those who are inspired to radicalization for legitimate reasons, and you just have to look at the manifesto of Patrick Crusius, who killed or injured 66 people in El Paso, to realize that he was not mentally sound. As you can see, this is a really complex area, and so it's one we'll come back to. So, if you haven't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button below, and I'll see you next time.